Well, Jordyn, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I am a huge gymnastics fan. I just, as a little girl, I remember watching Mary Lou Retton in the 1984 Olympics and just being so proud to see an American gymnast. Fast forward to 2012, which was your moment, right? You are part of the Fierce Five who won gold at the Olympics. What was that experience like?
It was such a whirlwind. I dreamt about going to the Olympics since I was 9 years old. I remember watching the 2004 Olympics at that time and watching Carly Patterson and literally out of a movie, just thinking to myself, I want to be just like them. And ever since that, it was stuck in my head. I had the goal of wanting to be an Olympian, and I was willing to work as hard as it would take. And so, in gymnastics, only five at the time, only 5 girls made the team every 4 years. You think about how many girls do gymnastics and how much talent there is in the U.S. And so it was really difficult to make the team. So I remember once I made the team, I was just so emotional. And it really just felt like a dream come true. And then, obviously I very quickly kind of went to, okay, I have a job to do. I got to go. And yes, I made the team, but now I have to go and represent my whole country and do well and all of that. So it was a lot of pressure, but just kind of surreal that I was finally there and I had, reached my childhood goal and dream of becoming an Olympian.
It's kind of so you were 17, right, at the time of the Olympics in 2012, and when I think about that, the amount of hard work. You said five women represent the United States every 4 years. So you're talking rarefied air, right? There's not a lot of you that make it to this point. What is it like to have this dream, as you said, from when you were a young girl, to realize that at the age of 17 and then realize, oh my gosh, I have this so much runway ahead of me. Like I still have a whole lot of years to live. What is that like? I mean, I can imagine there are only a very few people that can speak to that, to having a dream that they achieve at such a young age and knowing that they still have their whole life ahead of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think any Olympian would say the same thing, but you kind of have this feeling of, especially after the Olympics of, okay, what do I do now? What in my life is going to be that big and that important to me from here on out? Because it's like, ever since I started when I was 4 years old and moved up through the levels, decided I wanted to be Olympian at age 9. And so for as long as I could remember, gymnastics was my whole life. Everything I did throughout my day, every day of the week revolved around training and gymnastics and my goals. And so I kind of had this feeling of what's next and what's ever going to be that meaningful to me anymore. And I think every Olympian experiences that. And I think I was really lucky to kind of be at the age where I had 1 year of high school left and then I was going to go to college. And so that was a very natural transition. It gave me the next thing to do, the next purpose in my life. And but it definitely feels that way. It's like, what's going to be this cool and this big ever again?
Yeah. Well, and so you turned elite at the age of 11, right? Which is pretty young to turn elite. And then you became, at 13, you were the second youngest American Cup champion, and you did it again at 15. So the amount of, can you talk a little bit about what is required to perform at the level you performed at and to get to the place you did, to the one of 5 women who were represented? Can you talk a little bit about what's required to do that?
Yeah. I mean, the obvious thing is just the training that you have to put in. I started doing 2-a-day practices 5th grade. So I was going to practice in the morning for 2.5 hours, driving straight to school for half day, and then going straight back to the gym for another 4.5 hours. Wouldn't get home until 8:30, where I had to do homework and dinner and see my family and all those things. So that's the obvious thing that everyone probably could guess, is that it just every day of the week training. I had one day off. It was Sunday. And of course that required a lot of rest and just, resting my body, getting ready for the next week.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice. I really didn't have a normal childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I try to keep my life a little bit more balanced by, going to school part-time. And I think that really helped me because, while this wouldn't be the same for a normal kid, but school was actually a mental break for me.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to think about because gymnastics was really intense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the obvious thing. But I think more than that, I always say that gymnastics is 70% mental and 30% physical. So while obviously it requires, tremendous amounts of strength and flexibility and balance and all of these things, it requires a lot of mental toughness and a lot of being able to fall 100 times and get back up right after. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's made me such a strong human because that was that's what I did on a daily basis. I had to figure out how to get the job done and get through training, even when I wasn't feeling 100%. Yeah. And a lot of hard days, but I think having to push through those days because I had this giant goal and this giant challenge in front of me really made me an incredibly resilient human being. Yeah. And I see the way that shows up in my life after gymnastics as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about that. I know you gave this very popular TED Talk where you talked about the importance of turning your moments of desperation into inspiration. Can you talk a little bit? I found that talk so inspiring. I know our team members others who heard that thought it was so inspiring. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and what it meant for you?
Yeah, I think right now that word resilience is kind of a buzzword and everybody's talking about it, especially in the context of COVID and, just the challenges that every human being is going through, whatever that looks like in the past couple of years. But that's what it really, big picture, what I felt like when I was going to give my TED Talk was that I wanted the message to be really relatable to any human being, not just the elite athletes of the world. And the reality is life never goes the way you plan. Yeah. There's always, you're going to have goals, you're going to have things you set out to do. And a lot of the times that it's not going to work out. It's not going to go exactly as you planned. Most of the time it doesn't go exactly as you planned. But I think the important thing is what happens when it doesn't. How do we come back from that? How do we reframe things mentally? And how do we pick ourselves back up emotionally and mentally? And so, thinking about gymnastics and kind of putting it in that context, from the age of 4, I was up on the balance beam, which is 4 inches wide and 4 feet off the ground. And that's a challenging thing for anyone to think about, even standing on that. And we're doing flips and series and different leaps and things like that. And so you can imagine how many times you actually have to fall off in order to learn how to stay on and how to balance and how to, use your core and your arms and things like that. So ever since I was younger, that practice of falling and getting back up and falling and getting back up on that really small scale, those little tiny moments of resilience, I think really, accumulated over the years. Yeah. And that kind of transferred into, okay, what happened when I was at a big competition in front of thousands and thousands of fans and I make a mistake or I fall off the equipment.
Right.
And then I not only have to get back up and finish the routine, but then I have to go and to the next event and have an even better routine. And so I started to kind of connect the dots post gymnastics of how those little moments of resilience kind of prepared me for the bigger moments in life. Right. And one of those big moments was actually at the Olympics. I had a broken leg. I had a bad stress fracture in my right leg. And then there were, obviously some other things behind the scenes going on that, everybody is pretty much aware of now, but just mental stress. Yeah. And I go into the prelim competition and as the reigning world champion the year before, with a lot of expectations on me, and I came in 4th. And because of the 2 per country rule, I didn't qualify, even though I was in 4th. So again, just really devastated. I was mad at the rules. I was mad that I didn't show up as good as I could have that day. I was mad that I was injured and just really frustrated. And 2 days later, I had to pick myself back up and compete for Team USA in the team competition. So, I won't keep rambling on, but over the course of those 2 days, I really had to figure out how to come back from that and reframe it and be a strong human being and be there for my team and get outside of my own head.
I mean, that is just such an enormous feat. I just want to like let that sit for a second. You have this lifelong dream. You have this expectation. Part of your dream was to win an individual all around. And you had to basically make that shift within 2 days that, okay, that did part of the dream didn't happen. I still have this other part. I need to show up for the team. And you help the team win gold. I mean, it's just such an amazing thing. And I love if you could talk also a little bit about the other thing you talked about, the other things going on behind the scenes. You had the opportunity to make a statement during the trial or the sentencing for Larry Nassar, who was the team doctor, right? He was the team doctor. Can you talk about what it means to you to be a gymnast who went through that and experienced it, but your actions now are making it safer for all of the gymnasts that follow you? I mean, can you talk about that a little bit and what that means to you?
Yeah. I mean, that's really the reason I spoke out in the first place. And to be totally honest, when I sort of processed that was my experience and that's what happened to me, because while it was happening, I didn't know. I wasn't really aware of what sexual abuse was. It was so normalized in our environment. And I was a kid, even though I didn't feel like one, because I was doing a lot of very adult things. And the adults around us didn't do anything to make sure that didn't happen. So when I finally processed, that happened to me too. And that was not okay. I planned on remaining a Jane Doe because I didn't want people to associate my name with this terrible part about my past. I didn't want that. I just wanted to move on and not be a victim. And but the thing that motivated me to speak out was making sure that it didn't happen to other gymnasts or really any other people, any other kids. And so, I was kind of seeing the way when Olympians spoke up and those that had these bigger names spoke up, real change was starting to take place. And so I kind of felt this duty, this responsibility to be a part of that. And I'm so glad that I did, because it is, more than the change that has, I feel like is coming out of it and the action that's taking place now, it really helped me personally find my voice.
Yeah.
And that is such an amazing thing to experience in life. And I hope everybody, experiences that at some point and figures out how to speak out and confidently tell their story and not be afraid of what would happen if they do. So, it was a challenging time in my life, and it's still something that I'm not totally healed yet, but, I just think it was tough to go through, but I'm stronger now because of it.
Yeah. And I listened to your statement, your victim statement. And one of the things that struck me about what you said, you had a line in there that literally brought me to tears, which was something to that. I don't want to butcher it, but it was something to the effect of that you recognize that you were a victim, but you could choose whether you were going to live your life as a victim. Can you just, if you know what I'm talking about, can you review what that was? Because it was I thought it was so powerful.
Yeah, I don't really remember it, but I think I said, I'm a victim, but I won't live like one.
That's it. Thank you.
And that was something that, in that moment, I was directing my words not only at my abuser, but also at the organizations that failed us.
Yes.
And I wanted all of those people to know that they didn't have my power.
Yeah.
I still have my power. And that's what I wanted to express. And that's what I feel. And so I think that's what I hope for any survivor of sexual abuse, that they don't let anybody else take their power and their voice. So that's what I meant by that.
And can you talk a little bit how things are changing? So we're going to talk about the fact that you are now coaching at a university, the gymnastics team at a university, you're the head coach. But do you see things evolving for other gymnasts now that you and your fellow gymnasts kind of collectively came together, spoke out? Do you see it evolving?
I think it's a work in progress. I really felt strongly that the first step was accountability from all of the people that were supposed to be protecting us. And while we've seen that in some areas, we haven't seen that yet in other areas. And so we're still fighting for that, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And so, and then in other ways, I do feel like, just looking more at the ground level with our sport of gymnastics, I do think that the pendulum is swinging a little bit more the other way, because for so long, coaches, I think, had this definition of what made a successful and good coach. And it was, someone who was tough talking and, overly strict and borderline verbally abusive. And they thought, because that was the standard at the national level with the national team coaches, they thought, that's what creates champions, and we have to emulate that.
Yeah.
And so what I think is what we're seeing now is that coaches are redefining what it means to be a good coach.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you coddle your athletes. It doesn't mean that you handhold them. But for me specifically, I support them mentally, physically, emotionally, make sure that they're in a healthy environment while still bringing a level of intensity that in an expectation, so that they're still progressing and they're still reaching their potential as athletes. And so I think that definition of what makes a good coach is starting to change. I don't know if it's across the board, because I don't see every single coach. I don't listen to every single coach, but that's definitely what I'm trying to redefine and set a new standard of.
Yeah. Well, let's talk now about, at your young age, your second act, right? So you achieved your goal, your dream of going to the Olympics, winning gold. You did that. Now you graduated from college, and you had an opportunity. You created an opportunity to join the coaching staff at UCLA first, right? You were part of the UCLA, and basically became, right out of the gate, as far as I can tell, an award-winning coach. Can you talk a little bit about what that transition has been like, and going from being the athlete to being the coach, and what you think you're bringing to the table for your team?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting how it all kind of panned out. But I always, throughout my own career, was interested in the power of the mind, and how I could use my brain to help me perform stronger and better in gymnastics. And so I knew from the get-go I wanted to study psychology. I knew that when I was in high school. And so that's what I did. I studied psychology because I've always been fascinated behind the power of the mind and why people think and behave the way they do, and personalities and things like that. And the other piece of that too is, throughout my gymnastics career, especially with my experience at the Olympics, being able to come back and help the team win gold in London. I always felt like I did better at competitions when there was a team component. When I was doing it for a reason, or for a thing or a reason that was bigger than myself, I always performed better. And I recognized that after I retired. And so I think that's really what attracted me towards college gymnastics, because it's the only really league or version of gymnastics that is team focused. And so I went to UCLA. I couldn't compete in college because I went professional in the sport. I started out as a team manager, moving mats, chalking the bars, doing the laundry, whatever the team needed, which was shocking to a lot of people. But I just said, I just care. I want to help the team in any way I possibly can. And that's what I had to do. And then my senior year, I started coaching, more so just because I wanted to switch it up. And the head coach asked me if I would, and I said yes, and fell in love with it literally within a month.
Wow.
And I love the leadership component. I love figuring out how to get the team on track and on the same page, and to come together and connect. And it's a challenging job, but it's really fun. I love getting to work with college students. They're the funnest age ever. And more than that, I love the relationships I get to build with the student athletes, and kind of guiding them through 4 of the most transformative years in their life, which is college.
That's amazing. I love that. So is the plan right now for you to kind of continue you're so young, you're already the head coach of this amazing team. Is the plan to kind of continue down that path in terms of coaching? Right
now, yes. I love this job. I love being in the SEC I love Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And, right now, this is what I'm really passionate about. And I can definitely see myself doing this long term. I feel like, while it's intense and it's stressful, I really feel like I'm making a difference in people's lives, and they're making a difference in my life. And I feel like, what more could you ask for in a career? Something that is different every day. It's always a challenge. It's never boring. And I get to watch people grow and help them grow. And so that's just an honor to be able to do every day. So as of right now, yeah, this is the career.
I love it. All right. So thinking about, the fact that you're in a sport, both as an athlete yourself and now as a coach, you're surrounded by women. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about the role that women have played in your life.
Yeah. I've been really lucky to be surrounded by a lot of really strong, outspoken, empowering women.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very lucky to be able to say that. And I've been mentored by some really awesome people, women. And yeah, I feel lucky. I feel like that has helped me along my journey of finding my own voice and being able to be an advocate and speak up. I feel like, I remember in the early stages of coaching, I met with one of our bosses at the time who oversaw the gymnastics program. And I literally sat in her office, and the first thing I said was, I want to be an NCAA head coach someday. And I announced, that was my first year coaching, and I announced that to her. And I think I look back and I'm like, how did I do that? And man,
awesome though.
And so just, and then I had a really great conversation about just advice and books to read and things I could do and one of the things that she told me was that, there are not enough women in power positions, and there are not enough women staying in power positions. And that's the reality of that. It's hard. It's hard to have a family life and raise kids and all that and do it all at the same time. But we need more women who are willing to do it and up for the challenge. And so I'll never forget her saying that. And so, I feel really blessed to be able to be in this leadership position and to be able to impact people's lives, like I said.
And so as a female leader, why do you think it's important to support other women? Like, so it sounds like you've had some women who were supportive of you in your career, giving you advice. Why do you think it's so important for women to be able to support other women when they get into leadership roles?
I think it's just that. I mean, we have to lift each other up. And sometimes men aren't going to do it. And I'll never forget, I read a book. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's like a very common book about, finding a seat at the table. You might know what I'm talking about.
Are you talking about the Lean In book, the Sheryl Sandberg book?
Yes. Yes. I read that book, Lean In, and just about, we've got to even the playing field, and we've got to have more women who are willing to grab a seat at the table. And so, but I think that seeing other women do it and other women giving women permission to do it and saying, I know you can, is really important. I think that's what women have done for me. And that's what I want to do for my student athletes. And I tell them all the time, and I'm not always going to say the things that are easy to say to you. Sometimes I'm going to say the things that are hard to say, but you need to hear. But I do my very best to come from a place of empathy and caring. And I think that's what women can bring more than anything is balance of being able to say the hard things and speaking out, but also saying it with empathy and with the bigger picture in mind. So, I know I'm kind of rambling, but
no, I love that. And Jordyn, it's so remarkable that you have that perspective because, if you think about the fact that you were basically striving, your goal was to take one of 5 spots that 5 women would get in every 4 years, you could very easily have the attitude of every other woman around me as competition. I want to say that I just think it's unbelievable that is the perspective you have. And if somebody like you can have that perspective, then the rest of us women need to say, okay, we're not even working necessarily in fields where there's only 5 people that can do it, right? There's a lot more opportunity in most fields. So I love that you bring that to the table. Okay. Of all of the things you've accomplished, what are you most proud of?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I think more than any like actual achievement or accomplishment, I'm really proud of just the human that I've become because of all of those things, both the good and the bad things. And the fact that I'm even saying that is, to me, a really big deal, because I've always been really, I've always, when I was growing up, placed a lot of my self-worth on my accomplishments and whether or not I was succeeding, whether or not I was winning. And I think gymnastics kind of created that in my brain a little bit. And just with, you know, the way my coaches would praise me when I did really well. And if I wasn't first, I didn't win, if I wasn't the best, then it wasn't enough. And so the fact that now I can sit here and just say, you know, if I can, at the end of the day, say I did everything I possibly could to be successful today, even if I wasn't successful, then that's enough. And so I think just more than anything, it's just that mindset and the person that I've become because of all the stuff that I've been through, both good and bad, is what I'm most proud of.
I love that. And it's such a like mature, wise, beyond your years kind of perspective, because you do still, as I said, you've got so much runway ahead of you. I'm excited to see what you do next. What is next for you? Just either in your personal life, your professional life. I know you've got this team that you're working with. So what's next?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I love my job. I love what I get to do every day. I mean, obviously we've got big goals for the program, and we want to be at that national championship every year. I always say that for me, success, a big piece of success will be just when our alumni go out into the world and are strong women, ready to take on life. That's one of my major goals with this job, is just to prepare them. I always say that one of my major jobs as a coach is to teach them life lessons through sport. And yes, it's about gymnastics, and yes, we got to get ready to compete and do well, but how does that relate to life? You know, so if I can teach them those life lessons and send them out into the world just ready to be strong and work through stuff, I think that's what's next. And obviously we want to win a little bit along the way, and make it to the national championship. And then, you know, I would say that's career, but in other news, I just got engaged. So
congratulations. When did you get engaged?
Like 2 days ago.
Oh my God. So like very recently.
Yeah.
That's exciting. You have been dating another Olympian, right? Have you set a date, or are you kind of just in the early, like, I got engaged, give me a minute?
Yes, that one.
That's awesome. What is the best way for people to follow you?
Well, my Instagram and Twitter are the same. It's Jordyn_Wieber. So I usually post a lot of updates there of what's going on. I just posted my engagement announcement today. So people can see that. I do post a lot about our team and our program. So that'll be exciting for people to follow. And then I'll add one thing too with, you know, what's next in addition to being engaged, and then what we want to do with this program. I also am going to continue speaking out, you know, trying to do everything I can to protect children in sport and be an advocate and be outspoken for other survivors of child sexual abuse. So that's something I'm passionate about. I do a lot of public speaking and things like that surrounding that topic as well. So that's something I'm going to continue to do as well.
Well, Jordyn, thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing to make the sport safer, and for other children that are kind of coming along the way. It is unbelievable what you've accomplished in such a short time. So thank you for that. And thank you for spending your time with us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.